On Sports Central, we'll be going over next final prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Los Angeles Rams. And this is a team that was 9-7 last season. They ended up missing the playoffs just by a game. And this was a team, I believe, that was the first one out in the NFC last season. But whether or not the Rams will make it in 2020, why I think this could be a potential dark horse in the NFC next season is what we're going over here today. We're also going to be going over your returning production along with a full prediction and preview on every game on the Rams' schedule heading into the 2020 season. So anyway, with that, let's look at your season trends from 2019. Once again, they were 9-7 overall. They were 5-3 between September and October, and then 4-4 between November and the postseason. So, this is a team that kind of dropped off a bit as we got to November. They were 4-4 once again between their last couple of months of action, and they did a couple of good wins down the stretch. Of course, it was certainly a down season in comparison to how they were in 2018, but yeah, they did a huge win against the Saints, though, on September 15th. They ended up winning that game 27-9, and of course, the Saints last season, the Saints, they didn't have Drew Brees in that game, I believe. I think he got injured there in the first half, and so, yeah, they were only leaning on Teddy Bridgewater, of course. And the Rams just kind of capitalized on that, and they took advantage of it, but in the end, it's still a great win, no doubt. The Saints have got a lot of talent on that team, and I still expect them to be a big Super Bowl contender for the 2020 season. Well, they also had a big win against the Browns in Week 3. That was a road game in Cleveland. They won that game 20-13. They also had a blowout win in Atlanta against the Falcons 37-10, and they also beat off the Seahawks 28-12 on December 8th. So, this is a team down the stretch that did struggle quite a bit, but for them to be able to beat the Seahawks like they did was still a very impressive win, especially at that point in the season where the Seahawks are still even trying to make a playoff spot. So, yeah, all around for the Rams, it was a pretty mediocre season. I wouldn't say it was anything great, but certainly for the Rams, still a 9-7 record is really not all that bad in comparison to how they've been over the past decade. As far as their returning production looks, of course, they returned their starting quarterback in Jared Goff, and Jared Goff last season, he was very down in comparison to how he was in 2018. His interception to touchdown ratio was really, really not that good. He had 22 touchdowns and 16 interceptions last season. So he all around was pretty inaccurate in comparison to how he was in 2018. But yeah, the running back one, Todd Gurley, now with Atlanta, so he's no longer with the Rams for next season. And honestly, that kind of was a confusing decision on the Rams' part, I think, for Todd Gurley to give him away. Todd Gurley last season, he was a bit down. He only put up just over 1,000 yards, but still, that's still a great stat for a running back. And I understand he was being paid boatloads of money, but still, that was not a smart decision, I think, on the Rams' part to get rid of him. And I also understand that he's a very injury-prone running back, but still, Todd Gurley definitely is a running back that I would have kept if I were with the Rams. But in the end, this team still does have Malcolm Brown, their second running back from last season. So of course, he's going to really need to step up his game. But still, it's just it's still a tough decision, I think, on the Rams' part to get rid of Todd Gurley in the first place. But as far as the receiving core looks, this team is definitely going to be leaning on the receiving core for next season. They got Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. Both receivers, of course, put up over 1,000 yards last season. And Cooper Kupp especially, the good thing is for him was that he was healthy for the majority of last season. He did deal with some injury issues in the 2018 season, and that's part of the reason why the Rams did kind of struggle down the stretch in 2018. And let me remind you, once they got him back for the playoffs in 2018, that's when they really took a big stretch for the Super Bowl in 2018. But still, it's the good thing is they're also returning their second receiver in Robert Woods. Expect some big things out of him. But their wide receiver 3, Brandon Cooks, he's now with Houston, so he's no longer with the Rams as well. And yeah, Brandon Cooks, he's starting to get a little bit older himself. But still, it's going to be a bit of an adjustment there to not have Brandon Cooks in that offense, especially for Jared Goff. They also returned their tight end in Gerald Everett, which really he came out of nowhere last season too. No one really expected him to do as well as he did. So he's going to be a big receiver for this team next season and a good tight end in general for sure. But they do lose their linebacker in Fowler and another linebacker in Littleton. So this linebacking core will have some big adjustments coming into next season. They also bring in their running back, or their linebacker, that's why I should say, in Floyd. He's not going to be with this team for next season. And they also bring in defensive tackle Robinson. So, yeah, all around, they're losing a couple of big-time players. You can't forget about Todd Gurley. Can't forget about Brandon Cooks either. But the good thing is that they are going to have a very good linebacker in Floyd in there. And they also are going to have a big improvement on the defensive line with Robinson now in there. brings up the question, are the Rams a playoff team in 2020? Once again, they did miss the playoffs just by a game, I would say, in the 2019 season. Of course, they were 9-7, and I believe they were either the first or the second one out in the NFC last season. But will they make it in 2020? I think the Rams next season, no doubt, they're going to be in contention for it. It would not surprise me a single bit to see the Rams up there, especially in their division in the NFC West. I mean, that NFC West is looking very tough in general next season. I mean, you got several good teams in there. You can't forget about Seattle and the 49ers too. So that division is going to be really tough for whoever wins it. But in the end, I think the Rams do end up contending. I do think that they can get up to 9 wins again, possibly even 10. Well, I don't expect anything big out of the Rams, but I do think that this is a team that certainly could contend for that playoff position, especially since there will be 7 available spots for the playoffs this next season. As far as your schedule, looks like you start off the season against the Dallas Cowboys at home on the 13th, and that's going to be a very important game. I mean, both teams really need a good season, and certainly for the Cowboys, I mean, it's going to be an interesting situation there now with Mike McCarthy as the head coach. But now you got the Eagles then and the Bills on back-to-back road games, and those 2 games especially are going to be very tough, I think, for this Rams team. I mean, both places are really tough places to play. Plus, you got to play them in back-to-back weeks. Can't forget about that. But they do play the Giants and the Redskins then between October 4th and October 11th. And, of course, that's not going to be a game against the Redskins. It's going to be against the Washington team. Of course, there's a mess there with the name that they're calling the team. But, yeah, you also got a big road trip to San Francisco to play the 49ers then on October 18th. And that's going to be a very major game in determining who's going to win the NFC West. And you also got the Bears and the Dolphins then for the first half of your schedule. In the second half, you got the Seahawks, Buccaneers, 49ers, and Cardinals all in back-to-back weeks. And they got a big game against the Patriots at home, followed by the Jets also at home. They got the Seahawks on the road in Seattle. To finish off the season, then you got the Cardinals on January 3rd. So here's what I'm expecting out of the first half of your schedule. I think you go 4-4 in your first 8 games. I think you beat off the Cowboys, so that's going to be a big win there. However, I do think you take 2 losses to the Eagles and the Bills, and I went back and forth on those games. I think there's a good chance that the Rams do win at least one of them, but I think the Eagles and the Bills in the end do get 2 wins over the Rams, but they do beat the Giants on October 4th, I think. I also think you take a loss in Washington on October 11th, and then you also get a loss against the 49ers on October 18th. And I said that game was going to be very close, and I still stand by that. I think the 49ers and the Rams will definitely keep it close for their games during the season. But you do beat off the Bears then on October 26th, and then to start off November, you get a win against the Dolphins in Miami. So kind of a bumpy first half of your schedule there. I do think you go 4-4 in your first 8 games. For the second half, I think you take 3 losses to kick it off. I think you lose to the Seahawks, Buccaneers, and the 49ers. All 3 of those games are going to be very tough in general. And the problem is for the Rams is that you have to play all of those games in back-to-back weeks. So it's going to be a very tough stretch there. However, you do get a big win and a very much needed win against the Cardinals then on December 6th. However, I do think you take a loss to the Patriots at home on the 10th, and that one could go either way easily too. I think with the Patriots, now with having Cam Newton, of course, at quarterback, I think the Patriots are right back in there in the mix for the playoffs once again for next season. So I think they do get a win there against the Rams on the 10th. However, I do think the Rams win against the Jets, and they also win against the Cardinals for the second time in the season. So they get a clean sweep over the Cardinals, but they do lose to the Seahawks in Seattle on December 27th. So it brings up your record prediction to be 7-9, and that may be a bit low in comparison to probably how you thought I would be scoring the Rams. But, I mean, this schedule is just very tough for the Rams next season. If they had an easier schedule, they could easily be an 8-9 win team, but it just comes down to those really tough ones, especially against you can't forget about the Buccaneers on the road. That's all the way across the country. And you also got to play the Seahawks twice. You got to play the 49ers twice. You got to play the Eagles and the Bills on the road. I mean, I'd say this Rams team probably has one of, if not the toughest schedule in all of the NFL next season. I mean, it's a very, very tough schedule for the Rams, and that's why I think they go 7-9. And that's why I think this team is going to be, once again, they'll definitely be in contention for a playoff spot. I'm just not quite sure as to whether or not they'll be able to make it. But in the end, your home record is going to be 5-3. Your away record will be 2-6. You're going to go 2-4 in your division, and then 5-7 in the conference. But anyway, that about wraps up our final prediction on the Los Angeles Rams. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team. If you enjoyed this preview, be sure to slap a like on it and subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel. I'd really appreciate that. But as always, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I will see you all later.